Hello, and welcome to the Algebra 2 PLC. Today's session will focus on Unit 3, an introduction to trigonometric functions. I'm James Key with the MCPS Math team, and I'm here on the set of Homework Hotline Live today. This first segment will provide an overview of the tasks in Topic 1 of this unit. We'll look at some of the shifts in instruction, and we'll look at where the dividing line is between trig topics in Algebra 2 and trig topics in pre-calculus. Let's go ahead and look at that overview. So students are presented with a context involving a Ferris wheel to introduce them to the idea of circular motion. And that idea really is carried through a number of the tasks in the sequence. In Task 1, students determine the height of each chair, shown in this figure. In Task 2, they describe the relationship between the height of a particular chair as it varies with time. In Task 3, they extend the definition of the sine function, building on their prior knowledge from geometry. In Task 4, students look at some of the features of the wheel, the height of the center, the radius of the wheel, and the connection between those features and the graph that describes the height-time relationship, as well as the equation that describes that relationship. In Tasks 5, students are presented with a scenario where the motion of interest is horizontal as opposed to vertical, and students will use the cosine function to describe that relationship. Let's go ahead and look at the shift in instruction. For those teachers that have taught trigonometry and pre-calculus, for many students, the study of trigonometry really is synonymous with the study of this diagram right here. But if students' attention is focused on memorizing these values, that may detract from their understanding of the bigger picture of what a study of the circular functions is really about. We don't want these special angles to play an outsized role in students' learning experiences, so they really are not emphasized in the SLTs in Algebra 2. There is a content standard that does relate to these values, in which students are expected to use special triangles to determine those values geometrically. But notice that's a plus standard, and so it will be addressed in the pre-calculus course. Again, with those teachers in mind that have taught trig in pre-calculus, it might be helpful to know which topics are emphasized, which are not emphasized, which topics are dealt with here, which topics are dealt with in the next course. So let's just go through and look at some of the common topics that are excluded from the Algebra 2 curriculum. As I mentioned in the previous slides, the use of radicals to describe the exact coordinates of points in the unit circle is not a point of emphasis. Often a trig unit has students do extensive work with identities. Here we're really focusing on the identity listed in one of the content standards that requires students to prove that the sine squared of theta plus the cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. That really is the only point of emphasis around identities in the Algebra 2 course. In the pre-calculus course, they do further work with identities. Solving trig equations is traditionally a component of trig instruction. For example, finding all values of theta that satisfy this equation, not a point of emphasis in Algebra 2. A study of the inverse trig functions and their graphs and the properties of those graphs will be taken up in pre-calculus and is not included in Algebra 2. And lastly, the reciprocal functions y equals secant theta, y equals cosecant theta, and y equals cotangent theta may be addressed in pre-calculus but are not addressed in Algebra 2. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We hope that this has been helpful to you in terms of your long-range planning and your study of the curriculum. Just a reminder that if you have questions about the curriculum, you can send them in at any time to mcpsalgebra2plc@gmail.com. In the next segment, we'll begin to take a more in-depth look at the tasks in Topic 1. See you then.